Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Bianca Gonzalez, and I am the Bullying Prevention Program Coordinator with the Riverside Medical Clinic Charitable Foundation. Welcome to our final session of day one within our virtual bullying prevention conference. I do want to share a couple of logistics regarding the webinar and just a couple of new features that we are providing, which is our closed captioning services. So if you would like to turn those on, there is a closed captioning icon towards the bottom of the screen, and there should be an arrow pointing up. If you click on that, it should automatically turn them on, and then you just follow the same steps to turn them off. So it's fairly simple to use. We're also going to be recording our webinar, and we will be uploading it on our YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours as well. And then we have a kindness kit giveaway for those that have registered and are attending. So we will be providing a grand prize, which is kindness kits for a classroom, and other attendee prizes, which consist of Amazon gift cards. So if you're not an educator, and let's say you do win the grand prize, just know that you can donate a kit to your classroom of choice. And keep in mind that this giveaway is available to Riverside County attendees only. We do have the chat box feature available. There will be a Q&A portion towards the end of this webinar. So please feel free to leave your comments and questions until that time, and we will go over all of those. And after each of our sessions, we're also going to be providing a short survey. We look forward to receiving your valuable feedback. And if you complete a short survey, it's also an additional entry in our kindness kit giveaway. So we're also very appreciative of the help of our wonderful sponsors that have assisted us in facilitating this week-long event, and I want to go ahead and personally thank them. So we thank the Riverside Medical Clinic, Kaiser Permanente, the Press Enterprise, City of Riverside, Riverside County Board of Supervisors, Hub International, IHP, Alliant, Singer Luac, Union Bank, and LabCorp. We truly appreciate your support. So before I introduce our presenter for today, I want to share a little bit about our programming just so you can get to know more about what our foundation and specifically the Anti-Bullying Institute is doing. So as you can see here, this is the impact that we've had in our community in 2019, but I do want to share what we've been doing during this time as well. So about 36 years ago in 1984, 19 RMC physicians formed our foundation with the goal of improving health and the quality of life in inland Southern California through advocacy, individual and professional education, and service. Our foundation holds monthly support groups for endometriosis, prostate cancer, Alzheimer's, and brain injury and stroke. Currently, our groups are meeting online and receiving wellness check calls, and we have been mailing monthly newsletters to provide vital support information. Our scholarship program to date has awarded over $25,000 in 3 different areas related to health education and special needs programs. And in 2012, we held a lecture on bullying that inspired us to launch the Anti-Bullying Institute, also known as ABI. We offer services and resources to parents, administrators, and children in English and Spanish to assist in ending the cycle of bullying. ABI has impacted over 14,000 students and parents through student and parent-centered bullying prevention education, and we also currently serve over 20,000 Hero alumni through our ongoing programming. Our Traveling Triplets program is a doll therapy program which brings meaning and purpose for someone who is living with dementia. This program is currently on hold, but we hope to return to normal schedule as soon as it is safe for our seniors. And lastly, we have reached thousands through our health education and events in honor of some of our founding doctors. So I now would like to go ahead and introduce our presenter for tonight. A little bit about Don Powell is he is an administrator for Instructional Services at the Riverside County Office of Education, where he provides professional development to educators. Prior to that, Don served as an assistant principal to Upland High School and was a classroom teacher for the Victor Valley Union High School District for over 10 years. When Don's not working, he can be found playing all manner of board and video games with his 2 boys and girlfriend. So now I will go ahead and give it away to Don.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing tonight? I actually don't got, I can't see you. I used to being able to see people, sorry about that. But as I go ahead and share my screen, I'm gonna have a question pop up on the board so that way you guys can go ahead and drop answers to that in the chat. Hopefully you are seeing my screen now. And the question is, if you remember from PE, state from PE state finals and track, or the 4th grade race where you beat your arch nemesis, what was your fastest time you ever ran a mile? And if you're not an athlete, it's not a problem. How long did it take you to get ready this morning? Or how many different things did you do in that amount of time? Just drop those answers in the chat. We'll have those come fast and furious, because I want to tell you a story. While you're doing that, I'm going to tell you this story about me. I was a high school track athlete. I wasn't very good. I like to run. I like to hang out. I like to contribute on the team. And the first race they ever had me run was a mile race. Now, in my heyday, before this track event, I had run a mile in about 8.5 minutes in PE. It's nothing fantastic. It's nothing to be excited about, right? On this particular day in track and field, there was like the pack of people, and they all ran this race. And I'm telling you, I ran a race faster than I ever ran a race in my entire life. I'd never run a mile faster than this before, and I almost died. I ran the mile in 5 minutes and 47 seconds. So I basically shaved 2.5 minutes off my time. And let me tell you something. There were all of the runners. And then there was nothing. And then there was still nothing. And then there was me. And there was a little bit of gap, and there was a guy who finished behind me. At 5 minutes and 47 seconds, I was decimated by everybody. And that is the fastest I have ever run a mile in my entire life. Right now, I couldn't run a mile in probably 10 minutes if my life depended on it. So that is my running story and my thing. Let me go ahead and look in the chat real quick and see what we've got for answers. Is it not going to show me that, or am I breaking stuff?
Did you want me to help you, Don? I can read.
Yes. Yeah, if you could just read off some things that people have done, that'd be fantastic.
So I actually have mile times for you.
Okay.
Alyssa Zepeda, she noted 6 minutes and 15 seconds, or
Wow.
6 minutes and 15 seconds. We have another one, 6 minutes. And then
Okay.
she shared that her fastest time was 7 minutes.
There you go. Okay. So I mean, those are great times. Like, you think that, like, that's good stuff, right? And I mean, I don't know where you came in terms of races. I mean, those are like some phenomenal mile times. I couldn't run that fast, like I said, these days, but that's pretty impressive. So I'm going to shift focuses for a second, and I swear it's all going to kind of make sense here in a few minutes. But what's an impossible dream that you have? Once more in the chat, just, something like when you say, like, I wish I could do this, and people are like, that's impossible. That'll never happen. All right. Go ahead and drop that into the chat. If you're an educator, maybe it's an impossible dream that you have in education. It can be personal, it can be professional. If you work with kids in that fashion, what's something that you wish you could accomplish, or that your organization might be able to do, but let's be real, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's impossible. It can't be done. Those lofty, ambitious goals that we have when we're young and we're getting involved in our educational journeys or our professional journeys, and we're like, we're going to change the world. And then deadlines, life, and the rest of the world starts happening in front of us, and we're like, whoa, man, I remember what it was like to have those kinds of dreams. So go ahead and drop that into the chat. I'm going to share with you my impossible dream here in a little bit. That's what most of this story is going to be about, I guess. And then it looks like we've got some extra. Oh, there we go. Maybe I found the chat. No, it doesn't love me. Bianca, can you go ahead and?
Yes. So they're coming in, but we have one from Trinidad. I believe it's Preciado, and they noted opening up an orphanage.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Isis Cunningham noted opening up their own nonprofit.
Okay. Excellent. I'm kind of curious as to what your nonprofit would be, Isis. We'll have to talk. Not all at once, everybody. I understand.
So Allison Haynes shared that her impossible dream is leaving the present work that she does to become an ambassador representing the U.S. in faraway lands where she can convince others to take great care of children and youth.
That's a dream, man. That is awesome. Man. And I like how you said like a faraway land, like somewhere that like no one has ever heard of, or that maybe you've never even heard of. Over 200 countries on this planet, man. It's just, oh man, that's cool. That's really awesome.
That was great. And then Trinidad actually added another one, traveling the world while also healing those who need it the most.
Okay, excellent. Awesome. And then somebody said, I figured out how to get the chat open finally, Bianca. I'm sorry. Opening up a school and giving out scholarships for students, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna tie things back to the track and field world real quick. There's a guy named Roger Bannister who in 1954, he ran what's called the sub 4-minute mile. He was the first person to ever do it. The crazy thing about Roger Bannister is that in the 1940s, people speculated that you might be able to run a mile in under 4 minutes. They said it might be possible. And so they used all the science of the day and they did everything they could and nobody was able to do it. And in fact, by 1950, almost 9 years later, they said it was impossible. You couldn't do it. A human would die before they were able to run the mile in 4 minutes. And Roger Bannister in 1954 proved everyone wrong. Ran it in 3:59, which is crazy because now high school students run the mile in under 4 minutes. It's not an uncommon thing. Now, in our lifetime, I mean, not in my lifetime, but in the span of human existence, I thought it would be possible for someone to run what they call a sub 2-hour marathon. And that's a marathon in under 2 hours. And a marathon is 26.2 miles. And in order to run a marathon in under 2 hours, you would have to run a mile time of 4 minutes and 34 seconds every single mile. So imagine that, like you've run a 7-minute mile, you've run a 6-minute mile, I've run, like imagine cutting your mile time almost in half and then doing it 26 times in a row. In 2017, a guy named Eliud Kipchoge, at 32 years old, attempted the impossible. He ran the mile faster than any human had ever run it on the planet. He ran the mile in 2 hours and 23 seconds. Nike had sponsored the project. They called it Breaking 2, and it was huge. Eliud Kipchoge ran with 2 other marathoners, and the 2 other marathoners didn't finish the race. Eliud Kipchoge came 23 seconds away from achieving the impossible. People likened the idea of Kipchoge running a 2-hour marathon to landing on the moon. Possible, but just not in our lifetime. Like it was just not going to do it. So in 2017, Kipchoge does this and he fails. And I'm going to leave this story now to go talk about youth. And then I'm going to touch upon my story and we're going to come back to Kipchoge here in a little bit. So foster youth in our system, they've done some statistics and they've done some analytics, and they've discovered that roughly 70% of foster youth want to go to college. But the lifetime graduation, or the 6-year college graduation rate for most people, it varies if you're in public or a private school, hovers between 55 and 65%. So that's if you start at a 4-year college, you will graduate within 6 years with a bachelor's degree. The lifetime graduation rate of a foster youth, so not 6 years, but over the course of their lifetime, the lifetime graduation rate of a 4-year college degree for foster youth is less than 3%, despite the fact that 70% want to go to college. 60% of boys who age out of the foster youth or who are legally emancipated have already been convicted of a crime. So by the time they're 18, if you're a boy and you're in foster youth, there's 2 of you, 1 of you has already been convicted. In a room full of 10 foster youth that are boys, 6 of them will have already been convicted of a crime. 7 in 10 girls who age out of foster youth will become pregnant before the age of 21. 70%. 1 in 2 kids who age out develop a substance abuse addiction. And 1 in 4 won't graduate from high school or get a GED. 1 in 4. So 25%. 70% of foster youth want to go to a four-year college. And of that 70%, there's 5% of them that won't even graduate. So I'm going to shift again. I'm going to pivot. I swear to you, it's all going to make sense here in a minute. But I'm going to shift again, and we're going to pivot over to Nadine Burke. And I'm actually going to stop my screen share to reenact it, so that way I can make sure that the video plays really, really well. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. There's nothing worse than watching a choppy screen on a choppy screen, right? So Nadine Burke is going to talk about childhood adversity for a minute.
Why haven't we taken this more seriously? You know, at first, I thought that we marginalized the issue because it doesn't apply to us, right? That's an issue for those kids in those neighborhoods, which is weird because the data doesn't bear that out. The original ACEs study was done in a population that was 70% Caucasian, 70% college educated. But then, the more I talk to folks, I'm beginning to think that maybe I had it completely backwards. If I were to ask, how many people in this room grew up with a family member who suffered from mental illness? I bet a few hands would go up. And then if I were to ask how many folks had a parent who maybe drank too much, or who really believed that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child, I bet a few more hands would go up. Even in this room, this is an issue that touches many of us. And I'm beginning to believe that we marginalize the issue because it does apply to us. Maybe it's easier to see in other zip codes because we don't want to look at it. We'd rather be sick. Fortunately, scientific advances and, frankly, economic realities make that option less viable every day. The science is clear. Early adversity dramatically affects health across a lifetime. Today, we are beginning to understand how to interrupt the progression from early adversity to disease and early death. And 30 years from now, the child who has a high ACE score and whose behavioral symptoms go unrecognized, whose asthma management is not connected, and who goes on to develop high blood pressure and early heart disease or cancer will be just as anomalous as a 6-month mortality from HIV/AIDS. People will look at that situation and say, what the heck happened there? This is treatable. This is beatable. The single most important thing that we need today is the courage to look this problem in the face and say, this is real, and this is all of us. I believe that we are the movement. Thank you.
The brain is nothing but a series of systems that are all working together.
So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and this lady gives an excellent talk about it, about the discovery of that and how that goes and what the issues are with that. It's dynamite. You're going to get a link to that at the end of the presentation so that you can check out the full presentation if you're interested. And yeah, so the issue hits home to a lot of us. And if you're in education, something that occurred to me is that when our students are misbehaving and our students are acting out, especially if you have younger students or even older students, I mean, when kids are acting out, they're acting out for a reason. And it's really important. This quote from Michael Bonner has really stood the test of time, especially with me. He says, it's not happening to you, it's happening in front of you. You know, when a kid is acting out, when a kid is yelling and screaming and has some kind of crazy breakdown over something that you don't really fully understand, and you're like, all I did was, you know, and it's usually something extremely small or nothing, not a big deal at all. But what happens is that trauma gets triggered inside of one of our students, and so they're reliving that trauma, or they're experiencing an extremely negative reaction to something that we perceive as being trivial. And the fascinating thing is the science bears out that when students start experiencing flashbacks and those traumas, the brain and the body are actually reliving those traumatic experiences. So for that person, whatever that trigger was that caused this meltdown inside of your classroom or in front of you is, I mean, it's psychologically, it's whatever that traumatic event was is replaying in that student's mind, and they're there. And it's important to remember those things when we're dealing with our youth. I come back to my story and this last statistic on foster youth, and it says that 70% of inmates in California state prisons are former foster youth. I don't know if you're really good at English, but in terms of foretelling, I'm about to tell you that I am in fact a foster youth. And these stairs that you see off on the right-hand side are not the actual stairs, but I was an Army brat. My parents were in the military, so I moved around a lot. I started off ninth grade in a place called Neenah, Wisconsin. And then in November, we had moved to Pittsburgh during Thanksgiving break. So the first week of December, I had started school at a brand new high school. So I had been at the school, whatever the first week of December is, let's say it's even December 1st. And then my birthday was December 18th. And then on December 18th, my mom had exploded on me for the final time. My mom was physically and psychologically abusive, and so much to the point that she'd sent me off to a military school when I was in 7th grade. And I was at this military school, and I thought it was a cakewalk compared to living at home. I absolutely enjoyed it. And then, unfortunately, because it was a boarding school, I encountered, I was molested repeatedly over a 4-month period during that time. And to give you an idea as to how psychologically traumatic it was living at home, because people say physically abusive and they say psychologically abusive, and people don't understand the impact that can have. But I would have rather stayed at the military school and been molested repeatedly over the course of a year than go back home to my mother. When I went back home after it was discovered and it was found out, and my mother found out, my mother sided with my abuser and felt pity for him. So this was the kind of environment that I had grown up in. And at the age of 13, my mom, I don't even remember what happened, but my mom went nuts again. And I remember running out the door, and we had moved into this apartment building, and I run out the door and I run down the stairs because it's on like the 3rd story, and I run out the door and I run into the next apartment building. And then I run up on those stairs and I sit down and and I'm like, oh my God, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I don't know anyone. This is the age before cell phones, so I certainly don't, I don't have anyone I can call. My father lived 5 hours away. I had no one. I don't even think I had a winter coat at that point. And it's Pittsburgh. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't have anywhere I could go as far as I was concerned. And I just remember crying on those stairs. And I had never felt more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life, before or since. And I just remember thinking, man, if I can get through this, I want to make sure that no one has to ever feel this alone ever again. And I I lived on the streets. I lived in the basement of some of those apartment complexes because they had laundry facilities there. And people would leave their clothes overnight. And so I'd sleep next to the dryer, huddled up for warmth. And I did that for about 3 months. And I got really good at this system where I would go to school during the day. I would get a police escort home at night. I would say that I was a runaway. They'd bring me home. My mom was very polite. She would, they'd let me into the house. The officer would talk to my mom for a couple of minutes. I would run into my room and I would grab clean clothes or something like that. And then I would literally jump out of a 3-story window. And, you know, you fall to the ground and then you kind of collapse and roll and tumble in order to get out. And the snow helps in Pittsburgh. And then I would just run and go to one of these little areas that had the washer and dryer. And I would go to school because I saw school as my one escape because, you know, my mother had taken a lot of things from me, but there was no way that they could take your education. And so my high school journey began at Neenah High School in Wisconsin, then to Moon Area Township. And then I spent, in March of that year, a CPS worker came to my school and met with me and encouraged me to go home for one night and promised me that everything was going to be okay. And I did. And my parents had said that they were going to take me someplace for like a psych eval the next day. And I was like, okay, whatever. My bags were packed. It was all very weird. But the next morning, instead of going to a doctor's office, I got dropped at a courthouse where the courts placed me into a shelter. And so I went to the shelter and I was there for about 3 weeks until they could find a permanent placement for me. And so I spent 11 months and 6 days at the Mel Blount Youth Home of Pennsylvania. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or if you're a real big football fan, Mel Blount was a Hall of Fame cornerback in the 1970s. And yes, that is the exact relation. So I spent 11 months and 6 days in that boys' home. And then I had, during that time, I had an aunt and an uncle who had offered to take me in. And so they had done a bunch of paperwork and there were home visits and things like that in order to get it taken care of, which is why it took so long. But I had moved in with them. And so, well, actually, let me back up a second. So the boys' home itself had a one-room classroom where they taught you. And so I went there for the rest of my 9th grade year. And then because I did well at the school, they allowed me to go to the public school while I was still in the boys' home. And that was an experience in and of itself. It was a very racially charged area. The Klan was very active. I mean, they would burn crosses across the street from the youth home. It was really, really out of this world. And so after that, I moved in with my aunt and uncle. They lived in Virginia, which is where I wound up at Kipchoge High School. And then from there, my uncle, he was military as well, got stationed in Korea. And then his next duty station was going to be in Barstow. So they moved up all the way to Victorville, California. And so when we moved out to Victorville, I finished out my 11th grade year. Things were not working out with this family, with the family that I was living with. It just became increasingly apparent that I was just not a good fit for them. And they were not, we just couldn't make it work. So I ran away from home again. And I was bouncing off of friends' couches. My uncle was pissed. My aunt was infuriated that I was such an awful person and I spurned them and that they couldn't make this work. And so they actively pursued me. I was just trying to go to school. They would come to school. I was going to school. It was this crazy fiasco. But basically, they had caught me and put me on a plane and sent me back to Pennsylvania, where I was then in a shelter for 3 weeks during my senior year. You know, I was supposed to be trying to learn pre-calculus and all this fun stuff. And it was a little chaotic. Luckily, during my couch surfing hiatus, I met another friend whose mom had let me spend the night at her place. And, you know, a night turned into a couple of weeks, and they worked actively to get me back. And I was able to come back and finish up my senior year at Victor Valley High School. And so I was able to graduate high school, and I graduated number 11 in my class. Despite all of that, I'm still bitter about graduating number 11 because the top 10 kids got medals and I did not. But, you know, it's been 20 years. I'm going to let it go eventually. Just not right now. But despite graduating number 11 in my class, no one had told me that I needed to take the SAT. No one had told me that I needed to apply to a four-year college. So I went to our local community college and I spent 3 years there. And after spending 3 years there, I transferred to UC Santa Barbara. I don't recommend going there blindly the way that I did, but UC Santa Barbara is a top 10 party school and a top 10 academic school. I'm really proud of my Gaucho heritage. I'm a history teacher by trade now, but what's really cool about UC Santa Barbara is in the 80s, UCSB was this massive party school, and they were super proud of their party school image. And then a new chancellor came into school in the 90s and said, this is going to be a world-class institution for academics. And the students said, this is going to be a world-class institution for partying. And it is one of the only schools on the planet that is both. And I really enjoyed my time at UC Santa Barbara. And in my pursuits, I wasn't always sure what I wanted to be. I knew that I had wanted to help people. And so I got into teaching thinking that it would be really cool. I was sitting in a high school history class and I was like, man, it hit me that this guy sitting in front of me was getting paid. And I was like, I like history. I like teenagers. So I became a high school teacher and I taught for 10 years and I loved it. I absolutely loved working with kids. And, but I wanted to have more of an impact, which is why I moved on to work for the Riverside County Office of Ed. My hope is to inspire other teachers and to have a bigger impact. So I come back to this idea that Kipchoge tried to run a 2-hour marathon, and that Kipchoge at 32 failed. And I think it's crazy because, you know, I want to change the world. I want to make the world a better place. I want to reverse this crazy notion that foster youth can't graduate from college, that the system is literally lined up. If there was ever a pathway to prison, the foster youth system is it. And these kids need help and they need understanding, and they don't need someone, they need someone to give them some guidance. They need all kinds of things. They need it the most. Because right now it's impossible for them to do anything that involves anything after graduating from college because they can't even get there. But I think what is most remarkable about Eliud Kipchoge's journey is that he failed. And you know what he did with that failure? He said, you know, I'm going to try this again. And another company worked with him. And the guy last year in 2019 made an attempt to run the 2-hour marathon again at the age of 34 years old. I don't know. I mean, I was in my best shape at 18, 19, and 20. You know, I'm 37 right now. I am certainly in no shape to run a mile, much less 26.2 miles. And Eliud Kipchoge tried again, despite having failed. And he ran that sub 2-hour marathon. And so whatever that impossible dream is that you have or that your students have, it can be accomplished. Because this is something that people had thought would not happen in our lifetimes. And it literally just happened last year. You know, you check the statistics on foster youth. I didn't know any of that when I was a foster youth. I had no idea that there was no chance that I was going to graduate high school, or that there was no chance that I was going to graduate college. I had no idea that there was no chance, or that I was supposed to develop an addiction. I didn't know that I was supposed to be convicted of crimes. I didn't know that these were the obstacles that I was facing. There's this quote that says, the man who says it cannot be done should get out of the way of the person that is doing it. And so I didn't know that these things were impossible. It wasn't until I came to the county office that I recently discovered these statistics on foster youth. And so it's reinvigorated this passion in me, this idea that we can do great things, and we need to support our youth because they can do great things, despite what obstacles they see and despite what's in front of them. And we need to recognize that even though we have these ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences, even though we've had these negative experiences, that we can still do these great things. Our kids need that inspiration. We need that inspiration. We need to remember that the human spirit can accomplish so much, and that we're capable of doing these great things. And we do that by doing these things together. So Kipchoge, this 2-hour marathon is not world record eligible because they were trying to see if it could even be done by humans. And they had an amazing science crew. Nike developed a specialized shoe for him. He had pace setters that were all comprised of Olympic athletes and world record holders and amazing, amazing people that ran and kept pace with him. And he was able to do this. And I wasn't able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish, which isn't much. I mean, I work for the Riverside County Office of Education, but I have a college degree. I've got a couple of kids that I love to death. I've got a girlfriend that I love to death. We play a lot of board games at home. But I was able to do those things because people took chances on me. People believed in me, even when the odds said that they shouldn't. Statistically, Kipchoge had no business running a 2-hour marathon, prior to 2017. They were like, we're gonna do it all. And then in 2017, they tried it and they failed. And they were like, all right, it's gotta be done. I mean, the guy missed the mark by over 20 seconds. And here, he's beaten the mark by 20 seconds. I'm gonna tell you one more random fact about how insane 20 seconds is in the track and field world. And then I'm gonna open it up to questions. But in 1936, Jesse Owens became world famous because he won 4 gold medals in the U.S. Olympic track and fields in Germany. There was a guy who ran the 200 meters in Jesse Owens's race. And he ran that 200 meters at that time faster than anybody had ever run it on the planet, except for the fact that Jesse Owens at that exact same time was running that race. And so he finished 0.4 of a second behind him. And this person that finished 0.4 of a second behind Jesse Owens won a silver medal at the Olympics, and you've never heard of him. And it's crazy because he's related to someone you've all heard of. He's Jackie Robinson's older brother. And his older brother is a guy named Mac Robinson. And Mac Robinson went from 2nd place in the Olympics, losing 0.4 of a second to Jesse Robinson, to becoming a janitor at a school in Pasadena. And so that's 0.4 of a second. And this guy shattered a record, shattered something that was believed to be impossible by 20 seconds. Because people worked together and they were able to accomplish these great and amazing things. And I think that if we work together, we can all accomplish these great and amazing things. That's my shtick. So I would like to open it up to questions now. And Bianca, you're free to.
Thank you. So we do have a couple of comments. So I want to share what I believe we have a comment from Jerome, and he noted that you are a living testimony. we have another comment from Isis, and they shared, your life is a testimony in itself. You have power in your story, and you have and will continue to help others. Lillian wanted to thank you for sharing your story. You are correct. The seemingly impossible is achievable when there is will and support and a community, and that we're all stronger together. And then Isis would like to know if you have a business card or your contact information.
Yeah, I can definitely provide that. It's huge. The support is such a huge factor. It matters so much because I couldn't have gotten to where I gotten on my own. And, people ask like, what is it that made you different? And we need to isolate that. And, I know more than anything on the planet, I got here because people helped me out. No one, statistically speaking, you should not have looked my way. I shouldn't have been anything that anybody should have had anything to do with. But because somebody took me in when they shouldn't have, because somebody offered me food when they shouldn't have, these little things made huge differences. And the same thing is you can make these huge differences in your own life, and the human spirit, the human being is just capable of incredibly great things. And I don't know the answer to that, Yvonne. I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, I was able to finally get the chat up. So a classroom tip that, what is a classroom tip for teachers that can encourage foster students? I'm going to ask you, this is, I want you to think about a traumatic experience you've gone through. Sit there and think about something like, where were you when you were at an extremely low point in your life? What did you need at that point? If you can, just go ahead and type that into the chat. Whether it was a divorce, the death of a loved one, you found out somebody was suffering from addiction, or you've had to live with somebody who suffered from addiction. These are all common ACEs, by the way. But what was it that you needed at that particular point in time?
I can share something. It's as simple as I just need to talk to somebody about it. I need to express my emotions and my feelings to somebody. And that's what helps me, so I don't bottle it all up inside. So I think that's really important, being able to have that one person that you can confide in, that shoulder to lean on. So
absolutely.
I need.
And when Vonia said love, and Isis said I needed love, support to know that I was important and that I mattered and I wasn't alone. You know the answer. What do your foster youth need? They need those things. They need to know that you're going to love them. And here's the crazy thing about foster youth. You saw my high school journey. I went to 9 different high schools. You may not have that kid for very long. That kid isn't going to put a lot of faith in you to be there for them, because they don't have a lot of faith in where they're going to be this week versus next week. It all changes in a heartbeat. I would have never imagined that I was going to be at Victor Valley High School one day and in Pennsylvania the next day. And that's literally what happened. And it happened just like that, in the blink of an eye. But because they cared about me, they valued me, and they let me know that, even if it was for brief moments of time, that was the kind of stuff that moved me forward. That was the stuff that kept me going. And so you can be that for your foster. You can be that for your kid. Just when a kid comes and is crying and they share their story, just have compassion. We need compassion and love and caring and more than ever. And if we can do that, we can help nurse what those foster kids need, and they take that with them. I needed love, and that I was valued. Yeah. My mom died when you were 13 years old. I'm sorry to hear that. That's tragic. My dad died when I was 18, and he was my best friend. So I know the pain. I'm an adult. My dad never got to see me graduate from college. He never got to see me have a kid. He never got to see all the things that I got to be able to do. But I'm grateful that I've been able to do those things. And I talk about my dad a lot, especially to my kids, because I want them to know that where I came from, that I may have had a checkered past, but I'm proud of who I am. I'm certainly proud. I want my kids to be proud of who they are and who they are capable of. What can we do for those kids who have a dysfunctional family and feel safe? You can give them a space to feel safe. Just be there. I'm telling you, when a kid hangs out after class, after school, after class, or is putting their head down or starts behaving differently, there's a reason for them. It's happening in front of you, not happening to you. A kid has a meltdown and uses it in your classroom, I promise you, it's not because of whatever it was that you said. What you said triggers them. When I was getting molested, the 6 months or the year and a half afterwards, shades of blue would trigger. I would just go into full meltdown. I mean, literally at the sight of a color. And so knowing that, take that with you. Then remember that, obviously if a kid is having a meltdown in front of your room, if you can get them outside, rather than sending them down to the discipline office, get your kids working on a task outside, give that kid a hug. Let that kid know that you're there for them, be with them, and get them the help that they need. If you have a foster youth in particular, don't send a foster youth somewhere and be like, okay, this person will take care of you, because that person doesn't always take care of them. I mean, if you work at a school, some people are really nice, some people aren't super nice, or sometimes people get busy and they're like, oh, I don't have time to deal with you right now. I got to deal with these 500 other things. So walk that kid down there and get them that form, get them whatever it is that they can do, give them that assistance. Because what happens is, if a foster youth comes to you and looks to you for help, or goes to somebody and they get shut out, they don't have an advocate for them at home. They don't have a parent for them at home. They don't have somebody who's going to call the school. So they don't have anyone to be able to do that. So you can be that advocate for them.
Thank you. I actually want to read what Norma shared. She shared that those working with students need to be mindful of who we serve, support, and assist. Automatic respect and compassion are necessary. If it is not, one must check ourselves and explore what is getting in our way to fully support and assist students / all people. It is our expectations, stereotypes, and biases that get in the way in us truly and fully being that light for those in need, be that hope. If we can't help a person, then we should not hinder them in their process.
So true. It is so true. I mean, we forget. I'll share another quick story. I went through a really traumatic divorce 5 years ago. Right after my son was born, my marriage fell apart through no fault of anybody's. But I mean, my divorce was so traumatic that it cost me over $30,000 in legal fees. It is an ongoing process. My son is 5. We separated when he was 6 months. And it is still, I mean, my lawyer, I'm not even kidding you, my lawyer was literally calling me 5 minutes before we messaged. I told Bianca I have to go because I was talking to somebody who was relaying a message to my lawyer. Bianca, the eyes got all big and she was like, what? That's how long this had been going on. And it was such a traumatic experience that I had gone to, I had a friend who had gone into rehab for drugs, and they had asked me to come visit them, and I had started to go. I had went, and they make you participate in this group activity where the family members come in and they share these stories about how the drugs and alcohol had impacted their lives and things like that. And so look at, it seemed perfectly normal. We're sharing these epic stories of pain and futility and trial and all of this stuff. And you were hearing these stories about what people would do, and it was just heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. And honestly, it was therapeutic for me because I was like, man, I feel like I'm barely holding it together because I'm going through a divorce and I want to see my kid experiencing real pain. And the crazy thing is after that meeting, they brought in the residents, all the people that they were telling these stories about. And so you started seeing names to go with faces. And they looked just like you and me. You would have never been able to pick them out in a crowd. You would have never been like, that person's an alcoholic, that person's a drug user, that person's an addict, that person's a foster youth, that person's been through, we wear these masks and we wear them well. And we just need to remember that we need to have some compassion for people. So yeah, sorry, I went full postal on that one.
Thank you. Thank you. I first and foremost, I just want to thank you for sharing all of the stories that you shared with us today. I feel like we kind of created a safe space for us to talk amongst each other and share our personal stories. So I really appreciate that. I want to go ahead and share my screen one last time.
Sure.
Actually, oh, thank you, Don. Don actually shared his information in the chat box in case anybody would like to reach out to him. His email address is in there. And I just want to share with everybody just our final thoughts, final slides for this webinar. Just please feel free to follow us on social media. As we've been mentioning during the whole day, it's World Kindness Week, and obviously we talked a little bit about it, or actually a lot about it during today, just spreading kindness, compassion, empathy towards one another. Feel free to do that in person. Feel free to share it online. If you want, follow us and tag us, and we would love to share your acts of kindness and just spread it, because I feel like during this time, we need that kindness and positivity to be shared amongst one another. And we had a couple of webinars earlier today, but please feel free to register for the rest of our webinars this following week. Our website is listed on there, and we're adding the link in the chat box as well to make it a little more easier for everybody to register. But I want to go ahead and just ultimately thank you, Don, for taking the time out of your day, sharing this powerful and inspiring story, this message of yours, and for everybody attending tonight. And just ultimately, I've been saying it for all of our webinars, but just we're sticking to our message of being a community against bullying through kindness, empathy, and inclusion. I think that's the most important thing. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Don, again.
Absolutely, thank you. It was a pleasure. It was really my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. I hope everybody has a great rest of your night.
Take care and have fun.
Bye-bye.
Go hug somebody.
Yes.
If you can.
Everyone. Or virtual hugs.
Or virtual,
as well.
yeah. Oh, someone's asking for the evaluation.
Oh, we are doing a survey at the end of this webinar, so it will automatically pop up, and the recording will be up on our YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. Thank you, everybody.